In this video, I'm going to try and do something only ever done by Jarno Opmeer in 2021 and try and set a sub 1 minute lap time on the F1 game. However, nowadays F1 cars are a lot slower than they were in 2021, so I'm definitely not going to be following the rules, and I intend to cut every single corner possible around the Canadian Grand Prix track. Is this actually possible? I'll be honest, I've got absolutely no idea, but there's only one way to find out. So my first lap was honestly a bit of a disaster. I was still figuring out what lines to take through the corners and trying to shave off as much time as possible, which unsurprisingly didn't go very well. To be fair, in the first two corners I gained 2.5 seconds, and this was up against a lap time of a 1 minute 15, so this was a good start. I hesitated on the entry to turn 3 and 4, which meant that I annoyingly hit the wall, which definitely cost me well over a second. However, I was still positive to my delta, and for now that's all that matters. I thought that I was going to hit the wall again at turn 5, so I backed out of turning in, which wasn't ideal but probably the right thing to do. Honestly, after that I shouldn't have cut turn 6, as it meant that I lost loads of time on the exit, although this wasn't necessarily a bad thing, as I knew that there was so much time to find on my future laps. I almost spun going through turn 8 and 9, but for once I actually got saved by a wall, because without it I definitely wouldn't be facing the right way. Now we're coming up to the hairpin, and I stupidly decided to cut it as I thought that it would gain me time. Yeah, I've got no idea why I did this, considering the exit of this corner is arguably the most important on the lap, and grass and traction often don't go well together. Anyway, I was now 2 seconds up coming into the final 2 corners of this lap, but I knew through these corners I would gain so much time, and I was hoping to get into the 1 minute 10s, and for a first lap honestly that wouldn't be too bad. Then again, it's still slower than the actual world record, who wasn't cutting every corner imaginable, so I won't get too excited just yet. Luckily though, through the final 2 corners I gained well over 2 seconds, and it put me into the 1 minute 10s with loads of time to find, and I was desperate to make up for my mistakes to see where I could get to in terms of lap time. And I made up for a lot of these mistakes on the very next lap. Through turn 3 and 4 I was a lot more cautious, but I didn't crash, which put me 2 seconds up straight away. And then coming through turn 6 and 7 I was so much more committed, and to be honest probably a little too committed, as I lost time on the exit, but I was still 3 seconds up. So we'll skip through the rest of sector 2, but I did somehow lose a second through turn 8 and 9, however I knew that I'd make up for that at the hairpin. This time I took the hairpin properly, and although I had a horrible run through it, I came into the corner 1.9 seconds up, and by the end of the straight I was 2.3 seconds up. I then had a clean run through the final 2 corners and finished the lap with a 2.5 second gain and a lot closer to the goal, but I knew that it was going to be difficult to find well over 8 seconds. So on my last improvement I lost loads of time through turn 8 and 9, however this time I honestly did take it pretty perfectly and went from 7 tenths down to 1.7 seconds up. Next up was the hairpin, and for some stupid reason though I decided to cut it again, and I mean just have a look at the delta. I'm an idiot. Anyway, we'll go through the rest of this lap, but in the end I did somehow make a nice improvement of just under a second, and I knew that if I could engage my brain and take the hairpin properly next time, I'd knock off at least 2 seconds straight away. Annoyingly, my delta was bugged after this as my improvement stopped saving. However, I just wanted to point something out because I'm so confused. Can someone explain to me how I've literally just phased through a tyre barrier and just kept on going as if nothing has happened? By the way, this actually gave me loads of time, and I had now just set my first lap within 6 seconds of the sub 1 minute lap time, and I knew that I was going to keep making some massive improvements. And 3 laps later, that's exactly what I did. My delta just left after this point, so I was basing how good my laps were going off of sector times, and as you can see here, my middle sector was 1.1 seconds faster than my previous personal best, which was huge. And then I had a pretty decent exit out of the hairpin, which definitely gained me even more time. By the end of the lap I made a massive 1.4 second improvement, and I was now just 4.5 seconds away from my goal. Annoyingly, this would be my final improvement for the first day of this challenge, but I knew that on day 2 I would be getting so much closer to the sub 1 minute lap time. So for day 2 I wanted to try and get within 2 seconds of the sub 1 minute lap time, but I knew to do this I was going to have to start putting in some seriously good lap times, and also stop making small errors that were definitely costing me loads of time. And I actually started day 2 really well. After only 9 laps I probably had my best run yet through the first proper corner of my lap, and I felt like I was able to get really good traction, which set me up for the rest of sector 1. After this I also had a good run through turn 3 and 4, and to be honest I think the wall actually helped me a lot here, as this first sector was 3 tenths faster than my previous personal best. Next up was turn 6 and 7, and this was definitely the best I've taken these 2 corners so far, as I used all of the track whilst not crashing. At this point I knew that this lap was definitely about to be a massive improvement if I could just hold my nerve. Turn 8 and 9 were becoming an easy corner for me, which was good, but I was more concerned about what my sector time was going to be for the middle sector, and I'll be honest, I was hoping to be at least half a second up. However, I absolutely smashed this half a second mark, and I was comfortably over 1 second up, and I genuinely started to think that this challenge might actually be possible. Now we're on the longest straight on the track coming up to the final chicane, and to be fair I didn't actually take it that well, which meant to try and avoid the sausage curves, but in the end it probably cost me half a tenth at most. In the end I set a 1 minute 3.5, which was good, but I knew that this was going to be very difficult to beat. And it took me ages to get to my next improvement, but it was definitely worth the wait. I had a perfect exit leaving turn 1, and honestly I couldn't have used any more of the track, which was ideal. I then cut turn 3 and 4 much better than I had on the previous lap, and this gave me a first sector time 3 tenths better than my best lap time so far. Next up was turn 6 and 7, and although it wasn't my best run through these corners so far, it wasn't far from it, so I knew that I was still on a very good lap. Now we're coming up to the end of the middle sector, and I knew that I was going to be up by a good amount, but not as much as I actually was in the end. This was the first time in this entire challenge that I'd set a time in the 36s, and I knew that this was a massive chance to make even more progress. So we'll skip through this straight, but I knew there was loads of time to find in the final chicane, and I needed to cut it much better. Luckily for me, that's exactly what I did, and I couldn't have honestly had a much better run through there, and I had just set my first lap in the 1-minute 2s, and this lap was borderline perfect. And the lap was so perfect that I honestly just could not beat it. I was setting a lot of lap times close to the 1-minute 2 mark, and when I was setting very good sector times, I was either crashing or spinning out, which was so frustrating. So after about 100 different spins and crashes, I decided that I had to switch something up to try and complete this challenge. So I messaged my good friend Shiju Ali, by the way his TikTok is in the description, and asked him for some much needed advice, and he replied with arguably the most obvious but most useful bit of information I got in this entire challenge. And if you're wondering why I didn't think of using my maxed out car, I've got absolutely no idea, but this was such good news. I'd be well over 15 km an hour faster on the straights, and my cornering speed would be so much better considering how much extra grip I would have, and I couldn't wait to start. So of course my first laps weren't going to be as good as my best laps with a normal car, so we'll quickly go through these first improvements. My first lap was 5.7 seconds off the 59-second lap, and my next improvement brought me within 4.4 seconds of the goal, which was a very good way to start, and I knew there was loads of time to find. I got a much better entry and exit out of turn 1, so I was now 7 tenths up, and after this, through turn 3 and 4, I was mega committed and gained another tenth. This gave me my first sector time that was in the low 16s. Then going through turn 6 and 7, I managed to keep my minimum speed up so much better than before, and on the exit I felt like I was able to get excellent traction, and I gained a massive 4 tenths. And I was now 1.3 seconds up. Obviously I was still getting used to the car, and this showed through turn 8 and 9 because I gained a massive 7 tenths, which put me 2 seconds up. And this meant that if I kept this up, I would set a lap time faster than my normal car personal best in only my third lap with barely any ERS. I improved a lot on the exit of the hairpin, but annoyingly I lost about half a second without ERS along the straight, so in the end I only improved by 1.7 of a possible 2.3 seconds. However, this was as good as my time trial personal best with at least 6 tenths to find in only my third lap. And I found this time on the very next lap. Coming into the hairpin I was 3 tenths up, but I took a much better line and gained 2.5 tenths, but this could have been so much more if not for a poor exit. I gained another tenth along the straight and another through the chicane, which gave me a lap time only 2 seconds and 11 thousandths away from the goal. And guess what? 6 laps later, I once again made progress at the hairpin whilst being 3 tenths up coming into it. This time, going into the hairpin, I short shifted up to third gear in the middle of the corner, which helped my traction so much, and I gained time the whole way along the straight. After this, going through the chicane, I took way less curb and I didn't crash on this lap, and I made a massive 9-tenth gain, but I knew this lap would be very difficult to beat. And I struggled to beat this lap so much so that I actually had to rerun FP2. I'm not going to show you this lap as it was literally just 2 and 3 tenth improvements per corner, which just isn't interesting. Anyway, at this point, I was on for my first 1-minute 0-second lap time coming into the final chicane. And although I ran out of ERS, I barely lost any time and set an unreal lap time of a 1-minute 0.675, and I was so close to my goal. Really frustratingly though, I just could not beat this lap. I drove 3 different practice sessions trying to improve, but it was just not possible, so I had to resort to my only hope. This was trying to set the lap in Q3 when the track is most grippy, which would definitely help my traction issues. But the problem was Q3 is only 3 tenths quicker than practice in the F1 game, so I knew I could get closer, but at the same time I needed an exceptional lap to try and break the 1-minute mark.
Break it down by shapes and sizes. I'm a man who's got very specific taste. Just my type. Oh, you got a pulse in you, I live. Just my type. Oh, I think it's time to
That lap was honestly perfect. In the end, I broke the 1 minute mark by 1.5 tenths, with every corner being absolutely on the limit. Thank you all so much for watching, and please go and check out these other videos.